So he said, "V'acher kach," on page Memtes, he says, "Acher kach, rotzach ha'ma'atza le'elyon lahalvish ha'mochin ma'elu." So now these mochin, and let me remind you what he's talking about. He mentioned that there are three different stages of the mochin. First is the mochin when they first come out of the womb of Ima Eloah. And there are four of them. They're recognizable, no levushim on them at all. They're very bright, unbelievably powerful lights. One is called Chochmah. Then the next one, what next to it is called the Chasadim of Das. Then next to that are the Gevuras of Das. And just reading across from right to left, the last one is Bina. So those are the four mochin. There they are. Now what happens is they get squeezed down into three chambers, that is the Nai of Ima. So it goes on, Kadeshi Yel Koach L'Zer Anpin, so be some kind of energy source from Zer Anpin, this vol Ha'oras HaGadolim Ma'elu. It means I translated wrong. It says it means that Zer Anpin will have the ability to be able to handle these powerful lights, which is actually the whole dimension, the dimension of Yisrael Sav and Tavuna, which is in between Zer Anpin and these lights. So they have to be squeezed down. So he said, because these are the concept of different drops. This is the drops Kedusha. That Abba Ima Be'ez Zivug is Davgo B'makom Elyon Ma'od, that there is a yichud that takes place at Abba Ve'ima Eloyin, he's going to explain. And it delivers out these four mochin. Shehu min Erik Anpin, because the energy that's coming to them is coming from Erik Anpin. Erik Anpin Hamshicha min Atik, and Erik Anpin, this same drop of Kedusha, which is pure white goodness, he says comes from Atik. V'chein al derek zeh ad rum hama'alos k'mavur etzleinu. So it goes the same way when you come. In other words, all of this tipa that we're talking about comes from a very high source, and it's now out and exposed underneath the womb, or I guess the yesod of Abba Ve'im Eloyin. Below yesh koich bezer anpin l'sovlam, but zer anpin can't handle that. Like behi yosim oros megulim, if they're sitting there and they're just wide open lights. So therefore they need clothing. And this is, let me just move this over here. So now we're explaining the mochin. So we're talking about tevuna. It's another word for bina, but it's the lower aspect of bina. So he says that this is the ima that's bringing the mochin in. What you have to have, let's go back to the end of the first line, the nistalku, when they leave the oretz netzachod, the tevuna, her lights leave. Metocham lamala, from inside, that is of the nai of ima, they leave and they go up to the area of the teferis. V'nishayra kelim ahem, shal netzachod yisod kelim reikim milgi oro. So they're now the legs, let's say, and the yisod area of Bina are now empty. Besod Adam ki yamos ba'ohel. And this is a secret of a pasuk, or actually it's a mishnah, ki Adam ki yamos ba'ohel, maybe it's a pasuk. He said, Be'ein ha'torah miskaimim ela b'mi shemesis atzmo alecho. So this whole idea here, that the Torah can only be fulfilled by a person who kills himself for it. Hainu hatavuna hanikras me, that is me. Look at the language again. He says ela b'mi. Let's go back to ein hatorah miskayemes ela b'mi. So he says, what is me? Me is the number 50. 50 means tavuna. Shememis atzmo, that kills itself, aleho, on her. So what does that mean? She destroys a part of herself. Hainu hatavuna hanikras me. Shememesa atzma, she kills herself, ala Torah shuhu zer anpin, for the Torah, which is zer anpin. So you see, these are all like metaphoric words or substitute words that you could see. Going back again is the concept of her evacuating the lights from her nai, her own lights, to make room for the mochin of zer anpin, which is Chabad. It's coming into her nai. So that is the tavuna, which is called me, and she kills herself, so to speak. Ala Torah, the Torah, in other words, for the Torah Shabbat Peh, is zer anpin. Let's go look and see what the Shefa has for us. This is an important principle in Kabbalah. To understand this idea is a big deal. So number nun base, he said, V'achar kach ratzah ha'amatza le'elyon, l'halvish ha'mochen dezer anpin, tocha netzach hod yisod de'ima. So this is the desire of the he calls it the matzah. V'hu kadeshi yeh koich l'zat. So in other words, so that zer anpin should have the ability l'kabel l'sbol ha'oros ha'gedolim me'elu. So there's another concept of hismatus, of the limitation of the lights, that we're going to take the lights in their bold form and cover them into the nai. So why do you have to do this? Since these mochin, he says, I think he means from zer anpin, coming from a place which is extremely deep. Meroma ma'alos, from the most high, perceptible, from Ak and beyond. Shuhum min ha-yichud da'av sag da'adam kadmon. This is called the yichud of Av Sag da'ak, which means the ultimate yichud that brings about seed. L'visham nimshach, and from there this seed, shefa, which he calls a drop in other places, nimshach shefa, the parts of atek yomim. So then from Roma ma'alos, the Av Sag da'ak, which means the top of the head of Adam Kadmon, he said that he pours there into Atik Yomim, and Misham the Erik Anpin, and Misham Nimshach Hashefa the Abba Ve'ima, and Misham Nimshach Lazah. And from there it ultimately winds into Zah, and he's tracing the path. So this is the nature of this light which is revealed at this point that needs to be clothed. So it says V'al Kain. So therefore, so if they're going to come into Zer Anpin without some kind of a covering, Zer Anpin would not be able to manage those lights, and as a result of that, he'd break. So he's going on. He says, Al Kain, Kadeshi Yehaza Yachol. There's two Yachals here, so one I'm scratching. So he says, V'al Kain Kadeshi Yehaza Yachol Lakablam as a Mochim Shalo. So it's his own Mochim. But the Mochim in his own Mochim in their purest state are not usable by him. So therefore, it's Tzrichel his lavish Bekele the Netzachod Yisod the Ima. So therefore, he has to go into the Nai of Ima. So how does this happen? That her own very own lights, a nistalko, they have to leave her. In other words, the lights that normally are the mochim, her own mochim, inside of her nai, has to leave. And so then they're hollow. And now the mochim, which is, again, Chachma Bin are 2, and then Das is always 4, makes 4, but it's squeezed into one, which is called Das, the Zah. HaChachma B'kli Netzach HaBibina B'kli HaChod V'chadas B'kli HaYisod. V'yedei Zecha B'hoya Yochel Azal L'Kabel HaMochim Shalo. So therefore, now that's clothed in the Nai of Ima, Zah can handle them. Let me see, there's one more. So it's a v'kol inyan zeh nirmez b'sod ma'asha amra chazal. So this can also be understood by this pasuk or b'pasuk adaki yom b'ochel, a man who dies in a tent. Ein divrei terech miskaimim ela b'mei shememis atzmalach. Can only be fulfilled by a person who kills himself over it. And Bavar Ata now explains ki hatavuna, which is another word for ima. So we're using all these words together in different ways. Hanikras me, called me. He memisa atzma. Why is she called me? Because it's a concept of the 50th gate. That number 50 goes with ima. So he says, Vihi memisa atzma olav. Behind the shemistalkim oras hanai shalah, that is her own nai, the lights of her own nai leave. V'kol zecha b'shvil ha'tereh shuhu zer anpin, and she kills herself. Why? That's like killing yourself, like cutting off your legs, so to speak, or taking the nerves out of your legs, I guess you would say, is in order to be able to make room for the Torah. Who's the Torah? Zer anpin. Kadeshi yecholim mochi ha'chabad hislavish b'nai shalah, so that the mochi, which are called the chabad of zer anpin, should be able to be clothed in the nai of ima. And now that the shield is around these lights, Zah can receive them. Vein mispashtim b'kol kumasu, they go into the entire height of Zer Anpin. V'zeh iker kiyuma v'kiyuso, and in this is the main way that he's able to, that he sustains himself. This is the sustenance of Zer Anpin. You see now that it's clothed. Like we said, the chochma, it brings life into those who possess it. So let's look at the other one up here. Let me see. Yeah, that's where we are. Okay, number Nun Zion. We're at the bold print. So now that we understand the process of the evacuation of the Mochin of Ima from her Nai, and the penetration then from the Most High, the Mochin of Zer Anpin, which was destined to go into Zer Anpin, but now they're colored. So that's what we're talking about. The Mochim are now lights inside of the Nai of Tevuna. Vaz Nikra Sham B'Shem Lamed TZELEM. And at this point, when they're in the Nai of Tevuna, they're called the Lamed of the TZELEM. So in other words, they're not in Zer Anpin, they're in her Nai. They're still in the dimension of Bina. So Besod Shlosha Mochin Belvad. So it's a secret of 3 Mochin. There are only 3 Mochin, which is really 4, but that's the Lamed that we talked about. V'sham Naasa Roshim Hasheni. So he wants to say like this, at this place, it makes a Roshim. I don't know, was it Roshim, Rishon? I don't think I know, but he's going to explain it. It makes a Roshim as a stamp or an impression. Now, if you remember back to our days of learning the Sulam, we used to say that the Ein Heder Beruchnis. So it took a long time to find out this word Heder. Heder means lack. So he says that any time there's a manifestation of a higher element in a lower element, there's a stamp of it, or called a rishum, or rishum, that remains, right? We know this, right? V'sham na'asa roshim b'sheni, and it makes a second roshim. V'achakach niknasu b'hiyosim b'luvashim k'nizkars, and then after that, they go in, while they're closed, as we mentioned up above, toch reisha the Zer Anpin, into the head of Zer Anpin, v'az na'asa ch'besod osadi TZELEM, and he's going to explain this better too, more too, about then it becomes a tzadi TZELEM. So I guess what he's saying is as they appear, I think he's going to say like this, underneath the yisod of Ima Eloah, as 4 lights. That is, he says, that's a Rosham. That's Rosham Rishon. Then they can congealed into the Lamed, that makes them into Rosham Sheni. And then they go into Zer Anpin. So let's see why he brought us to those kind of ideas and what we could do with them. And here is Nun Zayin. So he said, "V'kol inyan zeh nirmez b'sod manshu amachazal." So this is all referenced in what the rabbis say. Al pasuk Adam ki yamus ba'ohel. Ein divrei Torah miskaimim el mi shemeis meis atzol lecha. I'm reading in the wrong place. I beg your pardon. I was reading Nun Vav again. Okay, let's go to Nun Zayin. Now the lights have left. Now the Mochin of Zachs come in. His Chabad comes into the place of the Nai of Ima. Then he says, so now when these Mochin of Zer Anpin, which are his Chabad, the Ima, Azayhem nirmazim ba'os lamed TZELEM. So when they come into that position, that's when they're the lamed TZELEM, because it used to be 4, now it's 3. 3 times 10, each one of them has 10 spheros, is 30. Because now the Chesadim and the Gevuros are now both, that is, are both lodged together in the Kli of the Yesod of Ima. And they're really, their references is that they're like one moach. We call them the moach hadas, and nikra das dezah. Even though we understand there's still mochim inside of it, but we just call it Chabad. This is the daled part of the Chabad. So if you have the mochim, the chachma, the bina, harechem shlosha mochim, these are 3 mochim. Should call echad kolum me'eser gematria shloshim. So this is, each one of this 10. That's the sof shloshim that we're talking about. But came near mazim b'lamed TZELEM, and that's the reason why they're considered to be the lamed TZELEM. Do you have any questions about this? Or can we go? Huh?
Good.
All right, because this is a basic part of this is in the Otros Chaim. It's dealt with maybe a little more length over there. I don't know. Same idea. So he says number nun test. He says b'sham. That is b'makom shenislav shel mochen the chabad deza b'kli hanetzach chod yinima. So that's the chabad inside of the nai. Na'asach haroshim hasheni shel mochen deza. This then therefore makes a second impression. The first one was up where the four mochin originally appeared. That was the mem TZELEM. So now you're at the second place, which is where they get squeezed into three kalim, and that's called the mekifim atachtoinet. Ki ha-mekifim elyonim heim bebechinas haroshim harishon, because the other ones, the four, the mem, refers to the first roshim. Umekifim atachtoinim heim bebechinas haroshim hasheni. Then after that they go into Zer Anpen Atzmo Kamoshi is Boyer B'Smuch, and we're going to talk about it. He says, so now the Mochim of Zaz Chabad go into him. But they're not just by themselves. They have an aspect of Ima that surrounds them as a protection for them. The Sok Rosh Hazan, they go into the head of Zah. Now here we're going to see that they become the tzadi TZELEM. Now, so maybe this you heard before, maybe you didn't. So what happens is that now you have the mochin inside of the head of Zah. There's Chochmah on the right, Bina on the left, and Das in the middle. So he says, let me go read from the word. It says, Ki ha-chochmah bina das tazah nechlochim kol sfira mehem l'shlosh cholochim. So what's the spheres? Chochmah bina das, let's say it's spheres. So let's say there's an upper part of it, there's a middle part of it, a rosh toch sof, just like we said before in the past. He says that it has a beginning, and it has a middle, and it has an em, shlosh cholochim. So what's going to happen is that you're up in the brain. So the top chelik is going to stay in the brain. The middle chelik is going to go down the right arm, and the lower chelik is going to go down to the right leg. So that's how it's mispashet into the three. That is the Chabad Chagat Nai of Zer Anpin. This is the Hachan of Zer Anpin. It's the right line. So one, I think I said it wrong, but let's say it again. The Moach itself splits into three: an upper, middle, and a lower Moach. So the upper Moach stays in the head. It becomes the Chochmah of Zer Anpin. The middle goes into the body, and it becomes the Chesed of Zer Anpin. And the lower part goes down further, and it goes into the leg, which is called the Netzach of Zer Anpin. The same thing on the left side is that the Bina of Zer Anpin, the Bina itself stays in the Rosh, the Gevura goes down to the right arm, and the Hod goes down to the left leg, and that's how it starts. In other words, you have three mochin in the brain. They split into two more sections down below, becoming three sections, and let's go on. So he says, once I'll call Sphira Mechem Shlosh Cholokim, so the Sphira is divided into three. The Mispashi Bekolatesha Sphira Shazer Anpin, and where do they go? They go into the Chachan Bagadati Dazah, that is the Das, the Ferris, and the Yesod, also because the middle line also has the splits. So he gets that Chabad Chagat Nai Kamavur Be'etz Chaim. That's all talked about over there. There are different approaches to that, but we'll go on. So we said that now it's spread into 9 spheros in the whole body. Again, Chacham, that's the right line, Baga, which is the left line, and Dati, which is the middle line. He says that it all splits like that, and now each one of those has 10 spheros. So v'harei kulam heim tishim. So the 9 places it goes are with 10 spheros, and v'al kain heim nirmazim ba'od sadik. So therefore we see there's a reference to them in the letter tzadik. Now that's the whole thing. That was in a nutshell. That last part was a very major section of the Otros Chaim, which is talking about how, in fact, over there goes in much more detail, how, in fact, that the Mochin are cleared out, what happens when the Mochin, the Na'yavima, leave, what happens there, then what happens, they come into Zer Anpin, and then how they split inside of Zer Anpin and go different directions, right, left, and middle, and fill up 9 spaces, and that's how all of those Mochin go into Zah. So now we have over here, we have this concept. Yivover shnei tamim lama yesh shtei bechinas makifim. So he's got two reasons why you need two makifim. So he said, V'haren is boyer tam lama hoyu shtei bechinas mochim makifim zulus apenimim. So remember, there are two makifim and one panimi. So he said, why do you need the two makifim? Well, I mean, what is their function, I guess, or I'm not sure exactly what his question is, but obviously they're not panimim, and there's two on the outside. Maybe does he mean, maybe you only need one on the outside, why do you have two? Or maybe he means, well, why do you need them all together? What do they do? I'm not sure. Let's find out. Hatam Arishon hu lefisha called davar shel kedusha. The first reason he just gives you an answer, because everything that has to do with kedusha, ose roshin b'kol makom shehu b'hechrach. Whatever kedusha, that's the sulam again. It's ein heder beruchnius, meaning that wherever kedusha lands, even if it's not permanent, it makes an impression in that place, and that's a starting point for kedusha. So let's read number Samach Aleph down here at the bottom, and we'll go on deeper into the process of bringing the Mochin into Zeir Anpin. Ata Maske Marav, he's going to conclude here, Zal. Shtei Tamim Lama Yesh L'Zal Shtei Bechinas Mochin Makifim. So he's going to bring two reasons why Zeir Anpin needs two Makifim. Chutz Bechinas Achar Shal Mochin Panimim, which he puts that in parentheses, besides not counting the TZELEM which goes in. Hatam Arishon, for the first reason is, the Fiha Klal Shakol Davar Shebekadusha is this general idea. Everything that has to do with Kedusha, that's Kadosh, Kasher Nimsa Be'ezim Makom, even when is found in any place. Afal Pish Achakach Hoylech Misham, and even though afterwards it leaves that place. Nisham B'men Rosham, there is an impression made there. So basic idea here, that could be a building block for understanding of other more complicated ideas. So therefore also, when we talk about the inyan of the Mochin Zeir Anpin, when they came out of Ima, let's review you again. We saw them when they freshly came out, they were 4 Mochin there. But then they go downwards, they're proceeding towards Zeir Anpin. Now just a word of caution is to remember that downwards and outwards, or upwards and inwards, are the same ideas. So I like to, just play around with that. So they came out of Ima. Ima is panimi to them. But then you saw a reference to them that there are 4 mochin there. That's kitzoni to Ima, right? So he says that's going downwards. Then they go further out. And they wind up getting clothed inside of the Nai of Ima. But the first place where they were there, which is this 4 distinct Mochin. That's where we see the remnants of the Mem Detzelem. So this is the upper Makif, very powerful, pure light. So he's repeating for us. He's teaching us it again and again. He says it's clothed inside of the Nai De'ima, got squeezed. And even though we say that they're going to continue going downward, they're going to ultimately spread and enter into the Rosh Zeir Anpin. But the place where it was before, I guess at the place of the squeezing, there's going to be an impression there. So b'makom arishon is lavshuv tokli anai de'ima, that first place that the 4 mochin went into the 3 kelim. That place is a place of what produces a rosha. V'nirmas besod lama detzelem, and therefore it's called by the name lama detzelem. V'hu b'chimbas ha'makif v'shenim v'tachton. So this is the concept of the second makif, known as the lama detzelem, or the lower makif, the Zeir Anpin. Now, v'chatam ha'sheni sheyesh shtei bechinos, because there's 2 bechinos here, right? Mekifim b'mochin dezah, the reason why there are 2 here, ki kevin sh'hamochin ha'elu heim oros gedolim ma'od, because they are tremendously powerful lights. V'gumoshi is boyer la'el, in other words, everything would disappear, every physicality would disappear in their presence. So therefore, we talked about this, because the whole thing comes from the Panemius. So the Panemius, in our case, is Eric Anpen, who represents entirety of Itzilus, as Panemi to all aspects of Itzilus. I can't take those lights, but they have to go through 3 different levels of contraction of the light. So first you have the mem gets contracted into the lamed. Shtei bechinas and bekif and their mazim belamed and mem TZELEM. A bechina achas a benemis, and then there's a third one, which gives it another restriction of light as it comes into Zer Anpen, and then it's going to be split up more into the Chacham Bagadnati of Zah. Mazim betzadi TZELEM v'yedei halavai. So with this, God should help us, the Kabbalah Mochin, Shalom, the Zaba can handle those Mochin. I think I might have went ahead a little bit, so we'll go back up to the top, and we'll pick this up. It's still all in the same subject at this moment. So, you want to stop here? That's a good place. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so see you.
Yeah, tomorrow my schedule is I'm going to be on the road tomorrow, so we'll have to talk about. And tomorrow is what are you doing tomorrow? You're going to be at home. Yeah, I mean tomorrow's the yard side, right?
Yeah, but I'll be available after chakras. So I stay around 9:30. Yeah.
Okay, so when you go to chakras, I don't know where you're going, but if you're going to a place you could do Nasiat Kapayim, try to think about what we're doing.
Probably not. Probably go to Chabad in Amateur.
All right.
Okay.
Have it in mind. All the best.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And how was the wedding?
It was wonderful. We saw this little girl. She was a little girl at one time. Somehow she grew older. I didn't, but
Of course you don't.
And she's cute as could be. She's redheaded, and she married a redheaded Levi. So they're going to be a hot time in the old town tonight over there.
You married a redheaded lady?
She married a guy his name is Binder, something like that, and he's a Levi, and he's got red hair.
Very nice.
Okay.
In New York?
Yeah, it was in New York. It was like just a smooth glide there. We got up to New York, and went to the hotel. We went to the wedding. We came back, went to the hotel, went home, like that.
You came home what, night?
Yeah, no, we came home the next day. We split. We got them. They had a hotel near the place. It was out by the airport for JFK.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah, that was it.
Have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
You too. Call too. We'll talk. Okay, call too.